Quarterback coach Jordan Palmer getting Joe Burrow, the number one pick, prepared for Thursday night in the NFL draft. And that just didn't start through this draft process. Jordan has developed a relationship with Joe Burrow. And if you dig in deep to what Palmer has going on out in California, he's got some of the top NFL quarterbacks right now. And not only at the top of their game, but he has been developing them for a while. Some of them since they've been in high school. He's got a relationship with Sam Darnold, who's a New York Jets starting quarterback that runs back years, and him and Burrow's relationship. We all know Joe down here in this part of the country. He stays pretty guarded on his football and his development, his preparation. Jordan Palmer is as close of a resource to him that he has, and watching him speak of him on an ESPN.com piece, was really looking forward to catching up with Jordan Palmer, former NFL quarterback, now a part of the QB Summit, and a quarterback coach joining us here on Off the Bench this morning. Jordan, thank you for the time. Good morning, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You've been working with Joe for a while now, and one of the things that jumped out in doing some of the research for this interview is that you went back and looked at his junior film, and a lot of people down here think post-Georgia game, his junior film, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Could you explain what you've seen from Burrow's development and how he's gotten better at that position over the last two seasons in Baton Rouge?
Well, yeah, and I think probably every person listening to this knows what happened his junior year in LSU and on the off season. It's so well documented there, but it wasn't necessarily nationally well documented. So I'm sure most listeners know more about all of that than I do. I can speak to my experience. I got a chance to meet him, I believe it was in June. And, Coach Orgeron, who I've known for a long time, Coach Orgeron was the defensive line coach at USC when my brother Carson was the quarterback there. So I've been around Coach Joe since I was a little kid. And so, I had kind of heard about Joe, and when he came out to my camp, I had some of the older guys here. I think Sam Darnold was here and Kyle Allen. I can remember he had got here at night. They were kind of sitting around a fire pit, and they came up to me later that night and said, "Hey, have you talked to the Burrow kid yet?" And I said, "Yeah, just for a second. I haven't really got to know him yet." And they said, "Dude, this guy's different." What are you talking about? I said, "Dude, this guy's very confident, very intelligent, knows a lot of football." And so I was kind of excited to see him throw the next day. He threw it really well and just started building a relationship. And so when then I started to hear what they had at LSU and what the situation was and kind of what happened in 2018 and what he thought was going to happen in 2019, I was all in. I saw it. I didn't see necessarily 60 touchdowns coming, but I think those who've had their eye on the program. And for me, I'm not. I don't live in LSU. I'm not an LSU fan. I'm not really a fan of any team. I work with a lot of players. So for me to subjectively go, wow, this might be the best team in the country, and this might be the best player in the country. And so it was just so much fun to watch that play out.
Yeah, I was listening to some media from you in doing some research on this last July, and you were telling people, I think you were telling Rich Eisen, like, watch out for LSU. I don't know a lot about them, but they got a quarterback. They got the dude, and they got athletes. They may be a sleeper for a national championship contender, calling that a couple of months out. But when you get your hands on Burrow and now you have a chance to work with him after such a productive season and such a high level of playing that position, what's your first order of emphasis with him in trying to get him prepared for the next step?
Well, in all of our time together, we're trying to separate it into two things. And one is, what do we need to improve? What's he currently doing that needs to improve? And this is with any quarterback. The second one is, what do I need to introduce? So what is just new? And because you didn't do it or see it, right? And it's not a knock or an indictment on anybody. He spent a lot of time in gun. So on the new side, spent a lot of time in gun. Let's get under center. Obviously, there's a lot of coverages on defense that you see in the NFL that you don't see in college at all. Play action. So there's just a lot of things that are just new. And because I do this every year for guys in his position, I can help figure out what he hasn't done yet and what he needs to, and how do we build muscle memory around that. And so, I think it started with us just going through everything that he did at LSU offensively, what he saw coverage-wise in the SEC and the playoffs, and then around that to make sure that every kind of box has been checked in terms of what he's been exposed to. This is the best. He had the best season ever, in my opinion, and had the fewest amount of, arguably the fewest amount of things to work on. But there's certainly still things that everybody needs to work on. And so it was kind of like what I meant. What they played in that little doc that you had is, just keeping all your cleats on the ground. How do we take things that he does really well and make that not just muscle memory where it's automatic and consistent, but also when it does falter or come undone, he has the feel to be able to fix it himself. What you can't do is just rely on having a bunch of awesome coaching throughout your whole career. It just doesn't happen. I played on 6 teams. I've been coaching guys a long time. For the majority of NFL quarterbacks, at some point you better be able to fix this thing yourself. Yeah. You can't just count on awesome quarterback coaching. Not every team has it. It's not an indictment. It's true. And so the great ones, they can fix it themselves. And so that's the biggest thing I do with these young guys is try and get them to what I call self-correction.
Jordan, how long does it take to figure out a guy's football IQ once you get him in? Because I know for me, going from LSU to the Chargers, I thought I really knew football. I thought I understood coverages and blitzes and pass pro and all those things, but you learned so much more. But with the quarterback position, it's a little bit different. So how fast can you tell if a guy absolutely gets coverages from day one?
Well, you got to install them. So what I do is it's a curriculum. I have a kind of a 9-week curriculum, and so there's a 2-week period where we hit coverages. So I start with I start really simplifying it. So for example, I believe that there are 2 coverages in football. That's it. There's man and there's zone, and there's a ton of variations of man, even brackets you can put under man, and then there's a bunch of variations of zone, whether that's just coverage or zone pressure. So if you start with just a foundation of, okay, there's man and there's zone, let's really understand that to win in zone, you need to put 2 receivers on adjacent sides of a defender to try and put him either a horizontal bind where he goes side to side and has to choose, or a vertical bind where he's got to decide to go deep to short, right? Like high-low read for kids listening. So when you look at that and you go, okay, so what are the coverages? Where do guys get put in binds? Now you go down the whole zone coverage side of things. On the man side, there's 3 ways to beat man coverage. A mismatch, my guy's better than your guy. The second is a release, which is, it could be a pick or it could just be a guy winning on a release. And the third is leverage, right? If I'm running an out-breaking route and you're on the inside of me and you got me in man, I should win. And so starting with, it's less about me figuring where somebody is. It's more about me just putting everybody through this curriculum. And you can kind of tell when guys go, okay, I've heard all of that before. Now this is all new.
Right.
And so then we just hammer it. So either way, I want them to come out of it where they've seen every front coverage and pressure that happens in the NFL. The other piece that we do is we use the NFL playoffs, Super Bowl, to learn how to watch tape. So each week we break down another the other team, and I assign each guy a defense. And so each week it rotates, and they go through a Monday through Saturday film breakdown, which is what NFL quarterbacks do. Monday, last 5 games. Tuesday, base pressures. Wednesday, sub pressures. Thursday, third down. Friday, red zone. So I put them through this whole program so they get used to it. So they get a couple of weeks of breaking down tape, and they get to see every front coverage and pressure that happens in the league. And when you start going through that, it doesn't matter if somebody's ahead or further along or hasn't learned it as much. They all kind of end up at the same spot. And now Joe had started playing for a guy like Joe Brady and with some of those coaches on that staff, but at some point it is new, and they've got to learn it. So I've created an environment where they can do that.
Jordan Palmer joining us here, quarterback consultant. He's on Twitter at JW Palms, also at Quarterback Summit is where you can keep up with the information coming out. You mentioned that you played for 6 teams. One of those was Cincinnati. Your brother Carson was the first pick of Cincinnati and wanted out because he didn't think that they were committed to winning. Joe doesn't have a choice, but does he want to go to Cincinnati? Not his personal preference, but as a player, would you like to see him at that franchise?
Yeah, I think Joe has the type of confidence to look at any situation and feel like that because they have him, they've got enough. And that may sound, cocky, but it's not. I think the great ones think that way.
Yeah.
I think Brady thinks that Tampa's it's theirs to lose now,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, because they got him,
right?
And so I just think that's how the great ones think, and it certainly played out that way for the Tigers last year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't speak to specifically what he wants, but and what he doesn't or any of that stuff. But I know that he's going to step into that situation. If they pick him and he goes there, he's going to step into that confidently, and feel like, look, we got work to do no matter what team takes him. We're going to step in here. Here's what needs to happen. Here's the role I need to play, and let's go. I just don't see him going into looking at any situation through a lens of anything other than confidence and excitement to go and play. And the thing I've always said is that I've noticed with Joe is, look, he went to a high school football program that did not have a tradition of winning, and they won a bunch. I think they barely lost in the championship or something like that.
Beaten OT.
Yeah, and then you guys, everyone listening is far more familiar with everything that happened last year than even I am, right? And so when you start to look at him coming into a program and doing that, that starts to look like a pattern to me, right? And so then you go, and we've really broken down, okay, what is it that made that work? And I think it's a sequence, and I've seen this before. And the first thing is buying in, and you got to buy into the right thing. So, Zach Taylor, new program, it's early. I think they've got some amazing coaches on that staff. Again, if Cincinnati takes him. So one is buy-in. Two is getting other people to buy in. So commanding the type of respect that other people buy in. And then three, leading by example to the point where you can demand excellence from the people around you. And what happens is the bar raises. And one of the things I've heard through this draft process when getting interviewed is everyone says, I was interviewing Jamar Chase, or I was talking to Justin Jefferson, or I was talking to Thaddeus Moss, and everybody says the same thing. They say, it was incredible how much respect these guys had for Joe. Never seen it before, Yeah. And so when you look at that, I go, okay, well, that makes sense then, because he got them all to buy in to the point where he could demand excellence. Yeah. If he doesn't back it up, you can't demand excellence. If you don't buy in, you can't demand excellence. So it really is a sequence. And so for Joe, he's got a pattern of doing that. And so when you're the number one pick, they give you a little bit more of a voice than if you weren't, right? The team is listening right away. So I just think, Joe goes there. We're going to see a turnaround like we haven't seen before. And for Joe, I think, he's just the perfect fit.
Your client list is as impressive as anybody in the sport. I got 45 seconds left. You work with the Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes. Is he as big of a freak as he looks like he is to somebody that knows the position like you do?
It's funny. With Pat, Cliff Kingsbury, who I didn't even know that well at the time, sent me a random text when Pat was a sophomore. He says, hey, I got this thing I want to send you. and keep in mind, at that time, he just chose that thing over Baker Mayfield, who went number one,
right,
and won a Heisman, right? and so I had, and I thought Baker was really good there too, so I was curious. But when I first met Patrick, his arm talent jumps off the board for sure. He's got a huge arm. But for me, what's most impressive is, he has this huge arm, but I think he throws with timing, anticipation, and touch, and gets rid of it as quickly, all four of those things, as much as anybody in the league. So, he has this strong arm, but the thing that impresses me is his ability to get rid of it quickly, his ability to put with touch and anticipation and throw people open. So he's a weird combo of power and just of total, complete control and touch. So I think that's the part that makes him freaky to me.
Joe Burrow's quarterback coach, excellent insight this morning. He's on Twitter at JW Palms. You can also read his work and keep up with what's going on at QBSummit.com. Jordan Palmer, former NFL quarterback, now quarterback consultant. Thank you for the time this morning. Stay healthy.
Yep, thanks for having me.
You got it. There he is.